the cloud. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order just to keep it simple. This is a subcommittee of the School Building Committee for Communications. It is March 26th, 12:02 p.m. We only have one item on the agenda today, and I'm gonna
Uh-oh. Looks like Phil's frozen there. That's no good. Oh, he's back.
Yeah, I've been having some internet problems, so I hope I don't get booted.
Okay.
Having it again. I see. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Just in case, Gary, I'm going to make you co-host.
Okay.
So that way it doesn't kill the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get booted, you can just let me back in.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see about that, but okay.
And then it'll record to the cloud if I get booted, just in case, because we've been having some communications problem here. Speaking of communications, so let me get back to that. So I just I created just a simple outline. I went through some of the communications. Summers has a school communications plan. I looked at a few of these that are out there and then tried to tweak it a little bit to the school building committee. This is very much a draft. And the idea here is to identify how this group is going to communicate with all the stakeholders, and share this type of document. And this again is very simple. Share this document with the full committee, and just so people are aware, like, hey, this is how you can get the information. This was what's going to be sent out. So I tried to keep this really raw because I think that the idea of this subcommittee is to do the work and not for me to create all this, information. And I shared with you the frequently asked questions simply because I had done some of that work prior, but it was never published. So I'm going to talk and then I'll let you, jump in here. Is my thought was, boy, it doesn't like that. Have a purpose statement here. When does something go to publication? What does the approval process look like? Mention the methodologies, and we probably should add something here about, we're going to have our own section of the website. We mentioned some of this last time, and then some of the community engagement strategies. I'm open to adding anything else. And Gary, I'm not sure if you have anything on your side from just your personal job about communications, if you have a communications plan as part of that. Again, this was meant to be raw and built out, and then we can always add to this document as we go.
Yep.
So those are my thoughts.
Okay. What do you think, Ann?
I think it sounds good. I think it sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I agree.
Point. Yeah.
I have a couple questions about this stuff here. I think generally it's fine. When we say facilitate two-way communication with all stakeholders, that's like a pretty high bar, I think. So I want to just talk a little bit about, or think a little bit about how we do that, because I think it's going to be hard for us to respond to all the questions and everything that comes up, and especially in a way that's timely and accurate. But that's, I think that's part of the challenge and part of what we have to do. So one thing I wanted to talk about was that, like, how do we, I'm pretty comfortable with like creating content, that like the FAQ thing and getting that out there and making it accurate and making sure that's what comes from the committee and it's all clear. But then to me, the biggest challenge after that is focusing people on that, getting that out to the public. Yes, obviously getting input and communication, but doing it in a way that that is useful. Like an example, an example of my other job, or my day job, is like yesterday there was some meeting where 20 people filled out a what's that called? A petition, like against this certain thing that was nothing that anybody was ever proposing. So, and I know we probably all experienced that a lot. So I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how you guys see that and think it out a little bit.
The one thing about that two-way street is we have to be very, very careful to set it up so that it remains positive, so that it doesn't become a platform for any kind of a negative back and forth. You know, you want it to be very positive and constructive.
And factual.
And factual. Thank you, Phil. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Catherine and Erica and I met earlier in the week to go through the agenda and work on basically some of the data that I had a meeting on Friday with Michelle Dixon actually called to me. She's from the State Department of Ed, the school construction grant side, and shared a lot of information. And I wasn't prepared for that, but she gave so many pieces and told us specifically what data to share with the state. But we crafted a paragraph, Erica and Catherine and I, that's going to come to the full board. And it's just about that. It's about factual, and maybe we need to identify in this document, don't expect us to respond to social media. If there is a response on social media, it will be simply stated as, here's where you can find the factual information. The piece that I forgot to put on here is we do have an SBC email.
I like that.
I'll add that in there. It's already set up. It's in the Willington, and we did this in an article in the Willington Wire, and it was, again, just the facts. Here's how we got to this process. Here's when the vote was for the town meeting. This SBC email is set up already, so it's created so people can just send in emails. And Gary, back to your point, maybe we will, maybe this is the wrong word. Maybe we want to start with something like this, so that it's not always going to be two-way, but we want to make sure we're providing the information for people, right. And that they know how, we've identified the ways that they can provide feedback.
Right. We also have present to speak at the beginning and end of each of our meetings. That's a very appropriate way it's not two-way, but it's a very good way for residents to share their views.
Yep. And I like that direction. I think, disseminating information is key. So we want to be disseminating it, and then we want to allow people the opportunity to ask questions. Like Ann said, that meetings are one opportunity for that. The email thing that Phil put up there was another one. So that allows us to kind of compartmentalize that. We can find out what the actual questions are, and then, whether we can decide whether it's appropriate to add that to an FAQ or to put out another communication about a specific issue. But I think that's part of it, is really focusing people on where to go for the information and where to go to ask questions. Those to me are the biggest things.
And that's what I was trying. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I also think if we could remember on Facebook where they had that little thing that would always go up about elections, and it would always go up about COVID. We could do that ourselves with a little canned thing number one, I think we were going to have a Facebook that was one way, right? So people could not respond to it.
Right. Maybe it's
no comments. Correct? Yeah.
That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. What do you think, Gary? In terms of a Facebook with no comments?
Well, I go both ways on Facebook. I got off Facebook for these types of reasons. No matter what you do, I think there's criticism that will come. If you don't allow comments, there'll be criticism that comes for that. If you do, then, you know, you deal with that. But I do think it's a media that a lot of the town is plugged into.
Yeah.
And I do think if we utilize that as a way to, like, I use Twitter for my job. So you're getting the information out there, you're sharing things, and then you're clear about how to respond to those or how to ask questions about them. But I do agree that Facebook's not the best place to do that, because then we have to just constantly check it. So I think I'm good with that.
I was thinking of a place to announce meetings and announce, you know, town voting, you know, if we have a town hall meeting, just a way to, or if there's a big decision made that would really interest the community. I think it would be more for announcements than it would be for interactions.
Yep. Yeah, I'm all for that. I think that's a good move. Yeah.
I like the idea of the email because if it, as you said, Gary, if it's something that everybody would be interested in, it could go on to the frequently asked questions. But if not, the person would get a personal response to their question, which I think is good.
Can we make it clear that however we're going to do this, if people submit questions or whatever it might be, I think they need to identify themselves. Is that fair?
Yes.
Where do you want that, Gary?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it.
Let me just put
Would that
make a note down here.
You mean where do I want it on this page, or where do we want it?
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this under public input opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking out loud and working as we do this, but just making a statement on this public input opportunities that's more along the lines of committee can respond more effectively when the public identifies them. I'm just during communications. I'm just typing out and thinking out loud at the same time.
Yep.
You know, all this stuff afterwards, but.
And that's required of present to speak. So I think that that's a fair. Yeah.
Similar to present to speak at public meetings.
And also on the SBC email site.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we could do is just blend this statement, a statement like that, into any of these. You know, if we collect surveys, we need to see your name. You know, that's one thing that, you know, when we did the survey, people were like, well, how do you know that the same parent didn't do the survey 15 times? And I shared that data. I let people know that, but I think that's important, that if we do some sort of open forum, like when we did, we were doing those smaller presentations at the senior center, at the library, we knew who was in the room. And I think that's important, that if someone's going to ask a question, they can identify themselves so we can respond. If they have a question, we want to follow up, that we have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing that I was going to mention that might be important for us, and we may need to find other folks to help with this, but I would want to have somebody monitoring the conversation. You know, not that we're going to reply in social media, but I would want to know what are there issues that are out there that are not factual, or that there are factual that we want to respond to in the appropriate way. So I don't know how plugged into social media you guys are, but I try not to be as much, and it would be useful for us to have those eyes and ears out there, so that we know what's being discussed.
Maybe this is going to go under here, because this talking about the approval process. So technically, any formal item that comes out of this committee should come through Catherine as the chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so things could be submitted to her. The things that and this is what I think we've had conversation about at our meetings, and Gary, I think this is what you're talking about now. is that if someone posts something on Facebook, because there's several very active groups right now, and it doesn't matter whether you support the process or you don't. I'm just going to close my email here so it's not recording. Is that we want to just not, and like you said, don't get in the mix, just point the direction. That information can be found at. So, any communications on social media from and this is where, freedom of speech comes in too, page, not the SBC Facebook page, should simply direct public to the location of information.
Right.
On the website.
Yeah, I'm just going to say not debating.
Yeah.
And we can spell all this out. I just think it's, let's get some raw ideas out here. So.
And I think we should have a sentence that everybody uses, for accurate and updated information, visit the, Willington website, blah, blah. So that it's always the same. Kind of like that COVID and voting on Facebook, but we'll have our own that we put up. But I could be a monitor for that matter, but just never talking back, but just watching.
Yeah, and some of this is depends on who your friend groups, and what's kind of silly is that typically the people who have the same friend group have the same mindset. Yeah. And so I always use caution with that, is that, we just want to, and the more we can get out that this is where you find the information, this is where you go. I think that the cleaner it is, and I actually like the sample sentence, because it might not be a school building committee member. Right. This could be a publication, a notification that we put out just to say, look, if you see someone talking about it and you're not sure of the answer, we want you also to say, this is where you can find the information. Everything's on their website. Everything's on their website. Everything's there. Mm-hmm.
This may be for the future, but Gary, are you in Manchester? Is that where you work?
Yes.
Did I remember correctly? There's a person named Daria Plummer, and she's in South Windsor, and I think they're building their 3rd, 4th, 5th school now. And she's been the person that's out there trying to get these passed, to get the community to vote for these schools. And I'm sure she would be happy to come and speak with our committee when we get to the place where we're ready to, we're having a vote coming up or something, and help us with strategies about how we could engage the community and try to get support. I think that's down the road. I think that's past when we plan and getting ready for a vote. But just to kind of put that on the back burner.
Typically, project managers will take part in that too, Anne. Like, they would be pre-referendum process. If you were going to try and move something, no matter what you were trying to move, if it was, buying land for a new site, if it was, to build a new school or to renovate, or you even wanted to let people know, like, look, we're not going to do anything. School building committee is recommending that we just maintain the 2 schools. But there's a marketing piece to that it's almost like how you get the message out. And it may take some specific guidance once you get to whatever that decision is of how you get that message out there.
Okay. So we have their support in that, in a plan.
And it might not even be their support. It's just that so they understand and they have the background information to know why the committee is recommending what they're recommending. It doesn't mean that they have to support it. It's just that they know the information. Like, why is the committee recommending this?
Okay, thank you.
And the only other really point that I want to make about this document is I think we need to make sure that we're fairly consistently putting information out there, even if that's similar to what was there before, to avoid things getting stale and make it clear that we're being active. So I would just reference that somewhere. I don't know if we need to give a time frame or not, but I just want to make that clear.
I was thinking, as I was going over the frequently asked questions, how quickly it becomes old news. And I kind of look forward to when we get to a place where we've made some kind of a decision, because, do we still continue to share the Fryer report? You know what I mean? We have so many plates in the air right now of ideas and options, that I feel when we have more direction, when we've made more of a decision and we know which way we're going, I think then it will be a little more easy to, communicate that. Whereas we're in kind of a confusing place right now. We have so many options and so many ideas, and
I'm smiling, Ann, because the very blunt responses from my phone call on Friday, when I had called, how I had sent the grant group an email just specifically asking the question what the group wanted me to ask about enrollment. Will you be okay with our October enrollment, 2019 enrollment, just to have a preliminary conversation with us? And that turned into a phone call to my office and a 40-minute conversation with 1,000 questions about what has been collected so far. I'm interested to see it. I mean, this individual was definitely leaning in one direction. And so I basically, and I don't know if Catherine sent it to the board yet or not, but I sent a communication to Catherine with a full recap of my conversation with with Michelle Dixon, who is one of the top tier individuals she's one of the individuals that decides on the grants. I think we're going to get some good guidance pretty quick.
oh, good, yay.
And basically the recap of the letter basically said, give us the data, they asked for some very specific things. Our next agenda is going to have it on there. It's basically a slideshow that's going to turn into a PDF that will be submitted to the state. Say, look, here's some of our general background information that you requested. Will you please come out and walk our schools? And then they will go back and meet and talk. And then we would then have a small group meet with them. And we have our questions on there. But based upon the information that I gave, everything that's already public about the quitclaim deed for HMS, about the age of our buildings, about the size of the land, about enrollment projections, everything was provided to them. And they said all of those things will help guide them about making an early recommendation to us about what to do. So
Very good. Thank
that's
you.
coming very soon.
Thanks.
I'm just going to finish this statement: digital backpack and website. I think this is important. If we can do a simple, and I wrote monthly because I don't know if that's the correct timeline, if monthly is too much, but if we did something like that, Catherine was just, we had a paragraph that we wrote, 2 paragraphs that we wrote. Here's a snapshot of what we're doing and what's coming up. Then someone doesn't have to read the 10 pages of minutes. If they want to, they can go back to the minutes, but that would provide it. It's like, again, transparency. Here's the information. It's out there. And it stops kind of the people making up their own things to put out there.
No, that's wise.
Yeah. 2 other thoughts for that. The Willington Wire, that comes out 3 or 4 times a year, Phil?
I think it's quarterly. Yeah. I think it's
Quarterly. Okay. So if we could maybe commit to trying to have something in every edition of that.
Yeah.
that would be a good time to update. And I think when we have some really exciting news, like when we make a good, we make a decision, about what what we want to do, maybe then we could involve the Chronicle or the Current, when we,
That's not on here.
okay.
That's a good, yeah.
That would be for our big landmarks, if we,
and again, that would be a statement or a chair, Catherine.
mhm.
She could pass that off if she wanted to, but
Well, we
Yeah.
can see if the committee agrees or not with that strategy, but they could maybe interview her or attend a meeting or,
right, something's coming up,
mhm.
for sure, yep. All right, what other thoughts do you have?
I don't think I have any more about this. I think this looks pretty good. I'd want to get input from the committee to see if they have other ideas, but I think we hit all the big ones in my mind.
So if you want to type into this document, you have access to this document.
Mhm.
So, if you want to make a comment on something that's already there, you can, do you use Google Docs, Gary? Or
Yep.
Ann? And I think you do some, right?
A little. I could work on it.
I mean, it's adding the comments is probably, I mean, once you highlight something, it just creates this little box right here. You click add comment and you just type in what you're thinking, and others can see it, from the group. It's the reason it's handy is if you want to make a suggestion to something, I would say we need a statement below each of these methodologies. Maybe we need a statement under methodologies about, we want to provide a wide variety of avenues that we can connect with people. And I'm just going to type, varieties of types of communications.
And Phil, on the website, I was on there this morning. I did not note, we have not put up yet the
Not there
Google.
yet.
Okay, so the website has, does it have the report or no? The Friar report, or is that old
Nothing,
at this
nothing's
point?
up there yet because the person that typically does the town, because it's going to be on the town side.
Okay,
The person that typically does that is out, so we're trying to come up with a different avenue that we can get those documents up there and organized.
and what do we want to have on there? We want to have the frequently asked questions.
Well, that was all the documents we identified at the last meeting.
Mhm.
And then once we have the frequently asked questions, we can just post that and continue to add to it.
Mhm. The other thought I had looking over them this morning was that possibly putting them by category so that some questions would be under, school or location, history, funding.
Yep.
So if you had a certain interest, and I guess what that would look like is every time you add one, that's one thought. The other thought is to go chronologically backwards. So the newest questions are at the top and the older ones are.
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. Maybe if we're done with this document, maybe we can get to the other one, but I don't.
Yeah, I was just gonna put in here, because I forgot to put the FAQ page.
Yep.
I'll organize it. Yep. Yeah, and this is really raw, like not proofread. This is me firing off.
Yep.
And giving different examples, so.
Right. So I kind of think that that at the top, at least for now, there's got to be the general bigger questions that people have, like, where is this process coming from? Why are we looking at a school? What is the charge of the commission? Things like that really just provide people kind of a base of understanding what this process is. And then as we go, adding other questions, whether that's chronologically or maybe we reorder them, I don't know, but I think it's important to start with those because that was the first thing I thought when I saw these listed. Other ideas, Ann, about other things we need to kind of lead off with?
Yeah, I love the idea of putting the charges on there. so that they understand, what the committee is working to accomplish. Yeah, and maybe Phil, when you mentioned that snapshot thing that we put out every month, maybe have that at the top. And it changes every month so that we have latest information right at the top.
I don't
And
know that I would do that in this section though, Ann. I think I'd have a section that was just on the website that was, chairwoman update. And then that could be a separate document. They can see it. We can link anything we want from this. So if we, had a piece in here of this athletic question about the field space and they see, hey, the fields are actually 2 different lots, we could link that to the document that's tied to it. Same thing with a charge. Like we could, just give a quick understanding of what the charge of the committee is, and then link because the charge is a document that's going to be uploaded. I'll hyperlink it so it's directly to the charge and they can see the full piece.
Perfect. So it says charge and you go to the list of the charges. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
I think the pro of organizing this chronologically is as the questions come in, if someone is actually going to review this, and there's a lot of questions on here, you don't want to have them search for it.
Right.
Like where, what's the answer to that? I mean, you could use the find feature, which is good in this. If you said, hey, I want to see what's in here about land, there's only one thing, right? It's an easy way to do it, but
yeah, I think we should number them. I think after the general questions, like you said, after the big questions, I would just number them after that and then just do chronologically. And then you could say, hey, your question, we answered your question number 27 or whatever it is. And then it goes to like 300 or whatever.
So probably. Just keep adding to the bottom.
I think so.
And not do by theme.
Okay. And how do we handle old information? We don't want that to be confusing. We don't want someone to get on and see that there are 7 options from Fryer, because right now today there may not be, as information becomes obsolete and no longer true.
What do you mean? And in terms of what do you mean in terms of give me a question that somebody would have about that or concern?
Okay, when I was reading it today, it talked about, there were how many options by Fryer. Maybe now it's still on the table, but as we move to the next step, they probably will not all be on the table. And someone who's just looking for the first time will see that and think, oh, there's 7 options out there.
Right.
Or 8 or whatever number there are. So, at some point, do we delete information when it could be old news and confusing?
I don't think we delete it. I think we should be clear about here, where we are in the process here. So to me, that should be near the top. And so I don't know how to phrase that question other than where are we in the process, or what options are we looking at this time? And then we outline, we answer why those are the options we're looking at right now. The Board of Selectmen has acted on it. The Board of Education has acted on it. And those are like that's related to our charge at this time. Is that accurate?
What do you think?
I think the stuff that you really want on here is some of the whys and not the currents. So the things that we're putting out in publication, in social media, in a monthly snapshot of what's going on, I think that's where you're going to get that information. You don't want to put questions on here where you have to keep going back to it and editing the answer. I think you want the real specific things on here where someone says, well, why can't we renovate Hall School?
Right.
And there's going to be response on there about talking about fire code, and it's one of the issues. Can we turn Hall School back to the Hall Foundation? Some of those really concrete things. What is a quit claim deed? What does that mean? I think that's the stuff that we want on here that leaves no chance for interpretation,
Right.
no chance for you to say, well, this is the best option because this is again meant to be factual. There, and it's really more than 7 options, right? And that's what you were saying a minute ago. But
Yeah.
Prior put out like 10 options because they're 4A, 4B, 7A, 7B, right? They put out a whole bunch of options, and we just need to say they identify these options. If we get to a point where we're beyond that and it's been narrowed down, those were still the options by Fryer. But
Okay.
the group is moved on to something additional, and that information should be gathered someplace else. And that's why I say, if we can keep this page, and that was kind of my intention when I started this a while ago.
Mhm.
Our population is still shrinking. We lose 30 students every year. That's not true. We can put real numbers on here. This right here, how likely is the acquisition of property? We could just explain the process for the acquisition of property. I mean, some of these things are just really straightforward. And I think those are things that we don't want to have someone's, their perspective. We want the fact in here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, just because it's on here as a question doesn't mean it should be here. This is an older document.
Right. So what's the best way, Phil, of us making this current? And
that's a good question, because this is really a big piece, in my opinion, of the communications committee, because this is how you dispel rumors and let people know, like, here's the reality of what's going on.
Yeah.
I think for me, I have no problem answering questions. I think as members of the public, as members of the committee, as members of the boards, as parents, I think the more questions you can put on here that I can answer, again, that are factual, that are concrete, and I can add some of those questions in, I think then I can answer them and make sure that when, if you can read it and go, okay, there's no bias in there. I'm trying to be very cautious of bias, and because it shouldn't be in a frequently asked questions document.
Right.
So I think that's the way that you could help is, if you can craft some of these questions, and I can do the linking, and I can do the a lot of the answers.
Okay.
I think, Phil, when we do this survey too, at whatever point that happens, did we talk about doing another survey? That could generate questions too.
For sure. I mean, I think that, the other thing is, once this, just a general start of this is out there, I think the idea of the email system, the SBC email, is going to be, if you have a question, here's a place you can pose it. And, maybe we might even put it on here, but we also might bring it to the team, the committee to talk about.
Right. Okay.
And also from present to speak, since we're really not able to respond at present to speak, that could become a frequently asked question.
Yep. Gary, what were we going to say?
I was just going to say, why don't we try to put together some questions that we feel would be appropriate here? Phil, do you want us to do it right in the document, or do you want us to send
do it right in here?
Okay.
Do it right in here. And if you want to make, what you can do is, if you go through and you like it, like if you like a question that's already in there, or you want to rephrase it, go for it. And just make a note, just put your initials by it. I can always take them out afterwards, or,
Should we use a different color? We could use a different color too, just to.
Yeah, that's up to you, because then I can see that you're working in it. But I can go back and see what changes you made anyways. I can see all your edits. But if you start from the top, this whole thing, and I'll start to clean this up too. Like, there's all sorts of questions in here that, have come up that may or may not apply.
Right.
Some of these were from Jackie and when she was here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So I apologize. I got to go in about 5 minutes, but maybe we could commit to taking a look, and have have our comments in there by next week and our ideas? Does that work for everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if the two of you can plug along at these two things,
Mhm.
these two documents as our core, we can share whatever progress. I don't know that we need to meet again. I think we have some direction. I think
Mhm.
we can present where we're at the next regular meeting,
Yep.
Mhm.
and then get a little more direction and then come back to it and see if they have any other things that they think we're missing. Does that
Very
make
good.
sense?
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
good.
Yeah.
So anything you can edit in here is in those two documents is great. And again, I can see them. I can see your edits, and you should, I'll try and make things really bold for you, or highlight or commented. So if there's something that I put in there that I want you to check out, I'll just make a comment of it. Make
Sounds
sense?
good.
Sounds good.
All right. So that was our task for the day.
Good.
So we can adjourn at 12:42. I'm just going to click stop recording.